May 1993, Northern California. 19-year-old Frank McAllister disappeared without a trace. His girlfriend's car was found abandoned, blood smeared across the seat. For nearly 25 years, silence followed.
I'm going to turn myself in next door at the sheriff's department for a crime I was involved in years ago, and somebody lost their life.
Then one day, Brian Hawkins walked into a Reading TV station, ready to make a confession that would change the course of his life for the worse. Here are 5 times people confessed to murder on live TV.
It was the confession that shocked the world. Lawrence Krauss telling me right in the CBS 6 lobby he killed his parents in Albany 8 years ago and then buried them in their backyard.
September 25th, 2025, ended with a confession that would send shockwaves through New York. Lawrence Krauss, calmly sitting in a local news studio, looked directly into the camera and admitted to a double murder that had gone unsolved for 8 years. Let's rewind. For years, neighbors believed Franz and Theresia Krauss had simply moved back to Germany. No missing persons report, no suspicion, just an elderly couple who quietly vanished from their Albany home. But authorities noticed something strange. The couple's Social Security benefits were still being collected, and that money trail led them right back to their son, Lawrence. As investigators closed in, Krauss contacted multiple news outlets with a bizarre 2-page statement and his phone number. One station agreed to an interview, but only if Krauss came in person. To everyone's surprise, he did. The anchor, Greg Floyd, had just 10 minutes to prepare. He found Krauss waiting in the lobby, clutching handwritten notes and appearing oddly composed for a man about to confess to murder. What followed was a 30-minute interview that would make true crime history. Krauss described his parents' declining health, his mother injured from a fall, his father unable to drive after cataract surgery. He framed their deaths as mercy killings, insisting he did his duty as a son. But Floyd pressed for specifics. 8 minutes in, Krauss finally admitted how he killed them. His father first, then his mother several hours later, both suffocated. His father with bare hands, his mother with a rope after she lay beside her husband's body.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What did you do to your parents?
I buried them in their property.
You buried them in the backyard of that house in Albany.
He claimed his parents knew what was coming, that they were ready to go. Throughout the interview, Krauss presented himself as a man acting out of twisted compassion. He spoke of outdated laws and the need for society to widen up its approach to end-of-life care. Yet he never mentioned terminal illness, just convenience and his own warped sense of duty. The confession ended as abruptly as it began. Police waiting outside the studio arrested Krauss moments after he left the building. He was charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of concealment of a human corpse. In court, Krauss pleaded not guilty. His public defender immediately questioned the legality of the interview, suggesting CBS 6 acted as an agent of law enforcement. But the physical evidence was overwhelming. 2 bodies in the backyard, both victims of suffocation. During a brief jailhouse interview granted before his lawyer intervened, Krauss remained calm and detached. He expressed no regret, insisting he did the right thing for his parents and had fulfilled his duty as a son. The case quickly unraveled Krauss's carefully constructed facade. Investigators discovered he had continued to collect his parents' Social Security for years after their deaths. The financial motive became clear, undermining his claims of mercy. As the court proceedings began, Krauss's bizarre legal justifications came to light. He argued New York's ratification law somehow protected him, presenting himself as a self-appointed trustee of his parents' estate. The judge wasn't buying it. Throughout the process, Krauss maintained an eerie composure. In the jailhouse interview, he calmly explained how his parents gave hints that they were ready to die. He described the murders in meticulous detail, showing a disturbing lack of emotion. But when pressed about his parents' actual wishes, Krauss faltered. There was no evidence they wanted to die, just his own twisted interpretation of their aging and vulnerability. The community, shocked by the revelation, struggled to reconcile the quiet neighbor they knew with the calculating killer now behind bars. The couple's home, once thought empty, became a crime scene, its backyard holding the tragic truth. Prosecutors built their case not just on Krauss's televised confession, but on the mountain of evidence showing premeditation and financial motive. The mercy-killing defense quickly crumbled under scrutiny. As the trial loomed, one thing became clear. Krauss's calm demeanor masked a deeply disturbed individual. His public confession was a calculated move in a desperate attempt to control the narrative. In the end, justice caught up with Lawrence Krauss. His parents, silent victims for nearly a decade, finally found their voice through the very medium he tried to manipulate. A televised confession that became his undoing. But if you thought this was shocking, wait until you see the next case, where a live television broadcast captured a confession that would change everything.
I'm going to turn myself in next door at the sheriff's department for a crime I was involved in years ago. And somebody lost their life.
May 1993, Northern California. 19-year-old Frank McAllister vanishes. His girlfriend's car is found abandoned in a Costco parking lot, with bloodstains marking the scene. For almost 25 years, his case goes cold, until Brian Hawkins, now 45, walks into a Reading TV station. He's anguished. Hawkins tells the journalist he's been through hell his whole life because of what happened. Every minute of every day has been a nightmare. Frank never got to have a life, but we were teenagers, and now I'm 44 and still haven't even had a life, and now most likely won't anyway. Hawkins' decision to confess comes after years of wrestling with his conscience. He speaks of finding faith. God, Christ, these things that have happened throughout my whole life since then, for over 25 years, have pushed me to do the right thing, he explains. But the damage is done. I know the wrong can't be changed, but this is the closest I can come to doing the right thing. With the cameras rolling, Hawkins reveals the truth. He's one of 3 people responsible for McAllister's death. The others, siblings Curtis and Shanna Culver. Their motive? Robbery. McAllister, flush with insurance settlement money, planned to buy methamphetamine. Hawkins and the Culvers saw an opportunity. They lured McAllister into the Shingletown woods, promising a drug deal. Instead, Hawkins and Curtis stabbed him to death. Then all 3 took his money, abandoned his girlfriend's car at Costco, and vanished. Frank's remains wouldn't be discovered until a year later by a passing hiker. Hawkins' confession is both heartbreaking and chilling. He describes the aftermath as absolute horror and talks about the years of torment. The impact of Hawkins' confession is immediate. Reading police move quickly, arresting the Culver siblings within 12 hours. All 3 are charged. In court, Hawkins pleads guilty to murder and robbery, accepting a 25-year sentence. The Culver siblings later accept plea deals. Curtis faces 35 years. Shanna faces 20. For decades, investigators suspected Hawkins and the Culvers, but lacked evidence. Their story, that McAllister dropped them off at a park, never changed. But guilt finally broke the silence. Hawkins' confession brings closure to a case that haunted both a community and his own soul. As of this writing, all 3 are serving their sentences. Justice finally catching up after nearly a quarter century. McAllister's mother, 81, at the time of Hawkins' arrest, finds some relief in knowing her only child's killers have been brought to justice. This case is a stark reminder. Sometimes, the weight of guilt is heavier than any sentence a court can impose. Hawkins' story shows that even after decades, the truth will eventually find its voice. And sometimes that voice sounds exactly like a confession on live TV. But if you thought this confession was shocking, wait until you hear about the next case, where a killer's remorse takes an even more unexpected turn. September 6th, North Carolina. Earl Valentine Jr. kicked down the front door, gun in hand. He fired 5 shots at his ex-wife, Keisha, then turned the weapon on his own son, Earl III. The boy, bleeding out, managed one final act of courage, dialing 911 and giving their address. That desperate call saved his mother's life. Valentine fled, but not before broadcasting a chilling confession on Facebook Live, changing his life entirely. Keisha Valentine had moved from Richmond, Virginia to a small town in North Carolina to escape Earl Jr.'s abuse. Her father's passing left her son, Earl III, as the new man of the house. Despite being only 15, he stepped up to help his mother. Just 2 weeks before the tragedy, he recorded a heartfelt video for his older sister, Debonair, as she left for college. No one knew those would be his final words. That September night, just after 1:30 a.m., everything changed. Valentine Jr. kicked in the door. Keisha walked into her kitchen to find her ex-husband pointing a gun at her chest. She recalls, "It just exploded. I felt a burn, not pain, just something that winded me." She tried to run as shots rang out, collapsing in her bedroom. Blood pooled, but her only thought was, "Where is Earl?" Then she heard his voice, weak but determined, on the phone with 911. "Me and my mama been shot. My daddy did it." Keisha's heart broke, knowing her son recognized his father's rage. But Earl III's final act was heroic. He gave the address before his voice faded. When police arrived, Keisha had barricaded herself in her room, shouting, "I'm in here, but check on my son. I think he's been shot." The officer found Earl, but the dying boy used his last strength to direct them. "Don't worry about me. Save my mama." That selfless act bought precious time for paramedics to save Keisha, despite her critical injuries. Meanwhile, Earl Valentine Jr. fled the scene. But instead of hiding, he turned to Facebook Live for his twisted confession. In the broadcast, he admitted,
"I just killed my mom."
He claimed to have been very sick for months and blamed his ex for dragging me all the way down to nothing. His cold, calculated words showed no remorse. Before his suicide, Valentine Jr. called Norlena Police Chief Taylor Bartholomew. The chief described the conversation as calm but aggressive. Valentine tried to confirm if his ex-wife was dead, showing little concern for his son. Investigators traced his phone to Richmond, Virginia, where he likely visited his father's grave, before tracking him to a Columbia, South Carolina motel. There, U.S. Marshals found him dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Keisha survived, but at a heavy cost. 2 bullets remain in her body, one piercing a tattoo that reads, "Have faith and hope and be strong." Now wheelchair-bound, she says, "I do this for my son, Earl. He saved my life, so I have to keep pushing on. Otherwise, my son would have saved my life for nothing." Earl III's ashes rest on the family mantle, his picture forever watching over his mother, the man of the house, gone too soon. This case isn't just about domestic violence. It's about a son's ultimate sacrifice and a mother's unbreakable will to survive. Keisha's story reminds us that behind every statistic is a real family, shattered by senseless violence. And while justice may never truly be served, her strength offers hope to others trapped in similar nightmares.
Who was this bloke?
Painter and docker.
What was your involvement in his murder?
I was just the bloke that killed him.
Do you even remember why he had to die?
No, I can't really tell you why.
December 1971, the body of Desmond Costello, a powerful Union enforcer, was found in a construction pit. The scene was brutal. Gunshot wounds to the head, body hidden, evidence wiped clean. Police hit dead ends as witnesses kept silent. For decades, Costello's murder remained unsolved, another casualty of Melbourne's underworld wars. But that cold case finally thawed in a hospital room. Decades later, Chopper Red calmly admitted to pulling the trigger, calling Costello an imbecile before firing. When asked why he did it, his answer was chillingly simple. "No, I can't really tell you why. I haven't got the faintest idea why. As I sit here now, I couldn't care less." There was no remorse, no guilt, just brutal honesty from a man with nothing left to lose.
There's no violence in shooting someone. There's no violence. There's no,
Chopper's philosophy on violence was as cold as his confessions. For him, violence required personal contact, blood, pain, and fear. Shooting someone from a distance, that was just business.
Didn't deserve to live.
But why was it up to you to...
Well, it must have been up to me because everyone in the remand yard shook hands with each other and said the first person that sees this bloke.
1974, Pentridge Prison, inmate Reginald Isaacs, a convicted pedophile, was found dead in his cell. Officially, it was suicide. But Chopper's final confession revealed a different story. According to him, every prisoner agreed. The first to see Isaacs must kill him. Chopper was that man. He and Mad Charlie Hegyalji beat Isaacs to death, then staged it as a hanging. It was prison justice, brutal, organized, and silent.
Sammy the Turk didn't pull a gun on Chopper. He was unarmed.
June 1987, outside Bojangles nightclub, Chopper shot and killed Siam, Sammy the Turk Ozarkam. In court, he claimed self-defense and walked free. But in his final days, Chopper admitted the truth. When I killed Sammy the Turk, that wasn't self-defense. That was outright f***ing murder. He even laughed at how easily the jury believed his story. 2002, Casino, New South Wales. Biker boss Sid Collins disappeared without a trace. Police suspected foul play, but found nothing. Chopper's deathbed confession finally solved the mystery. His entire justification was,
Because he was an absolute turd.
when asked how it felt to kill, Chopper's answer was terrifyingly simple.
Didn't feel anything at all. Nothing. Nothing.
No remorse, no guilt, not even satisfaction. Just an empty void where conscience should be. Mark Brandon Chopper. Red spent 23 of his 58 years behind bars. His deathbed confessions finally separated truth from legend, revealing 4 cold-blooded murders hidden behind decades of myth-making. He died as he lived, with no remorse, few regrets, and absolute honesty about his violent life.
News scoop. I did it. I'm confessing to a murder on camera.
January 6, 2024. The sterile chill of death row in Florida's prison system breaks with a sudden, unexpected confession. Gary Michael Hilton, barely clinging to life at 78, finally admits to the murder that earned him the death penalty. After 17 years of calculated silence, Hilton, already notorious as the National Forest serial killer, spent decades haunting the wooded trails of Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida. His military survival training turned him into a phantom predator, stalking hikers and campers who vanished without a trace. But it was the 2007 killing of Cheryl Dunlap, a devout nurse and Sunday school teacher, that brought him to Florida's death row. Her disappearance on December 3rd went from mystery to horror when her dismembered body was found in Apalachicola National Forest. Her car, abandoned on the roadside, was the first clue in a gruesome puzzle. For nearly 2 decades, Hilton denied involvement in Dunlap's murder, even while admitting to other killings. He confessed to the 2008 murder of Meredith Emerson in Georgia, and to the brutal deaths of John and Irene Bryant in North Carolina. But Dunlap's case remained an open wound for her family and investigators. Then, as his health failed, Hilton reached out to Court TV's David Scott. He promised a Lollapalooza interview that would knock your socks off. The dying killer had one more secret to unload. His confession wasn't remorseful. It was cold, clinical, and almost proud. Hilton's reason for finally talking: very poor health. That's one reason I'm doing this, because I'm going to die soon, he admitted. But the confession wasn't about clearing his conscience. It was about control. Even in his final days, Hilton wanted to dictate the narrative. When asked if he enjoyed the fear he inspired, Hilton replied, "You know, in a perverse kind of way, I do." He dismissed the serial killer label as a dime a dozen. When pressed about being a psychopath, he insisted no. But when asked about being a sociopath, he quietly admitted, "I have part of that in me." His confession came with chilling details. He described Dunlap as a devout Christian and a real wheel in the church. He acknowledged her case was still under appeal, but brushed it aside with, "But hey, I'm gonna give you a news scoop. I did it." Hilton's death row confession wasn't just about one murder. It was a window into the mind of a man who spent years hunting humans for sport. His military training, survival skills, and complete lack of empathy made him a uniquely dangerous predator. Paul Holes, host of HLN's Real Life Nightmare, explained, "He is very accomplished at living in the outdoors and knows the terrain, knows where there would be a victim pool, and which areas in these forests would be best for him to get away with committing his crimes." Despite his age and failing health, Hilton remains a suspect in several other unsolved cases. The pattern of disappearances and murders in national forests across the Southeast suggests a wider trail of victims. Court TV's David Scott described Hilton as void of empathy. He said, "He is the most prolific of the murderers we've covered, and perhaps the most maniacal. What struck me was the absolute void of empathy. as if it was not in his DNA. Hilton's death row confession finally closed one painful chapter for Cheryl Dunlap's family, but it also opened the door to new questions about how many other victims might remain undiscovered in the forests he called home. The National Forest serial killer may finally face justice for all his known crimes. But as he sits on death row, one question remains: how many more secrets does Gary Michael Hilton still hold?